Welcome, everyone. This feels like a very big room with people scattered all around, but welcome to TechFest. And we are the host of TechFest at the Trager Institute. So I was going to tell you just a little bit about who we are. We actually have been in existence since 2015. We are really focusing on changing the way we help older adults to age. So we believe that aging is an opportunity. It's not a disease. It is just something that we all are. Once we are born, you start to age, and we are just all of us are together on that journey of aging. So how can we do it the best way possible? How can we have resources in place the best way possible to ensure optimal aging and living with dignity? And so we started our work. We also do a lot of workforce development. We do a lot of innovations, and I'm going to show you some of our innovations today. Sorry. What is going on? Oh. Yeah, you just need to exit. Sorry, this is normally how we function. We interrupt each other. Sorry, just keep going. Okay, so we did a lot of innovation. I'm going to share with you some of our innovations today, but a lot of the other work we do is workforce development. So we are one of the organizations, we're actually the only one that we know of that has been able to get all of the workforce development grants from the Department of Health and Human Services. So we manage about $6 million a year, where we really work on creating a workforce that understand how we need to work together to make aging an opportunity. So we train doctors, nurses, social workers, physical therapists to really work together in creating of a healthcare space that is beneficial for aging. So in that context, and then we also have a clinic. We also have a clinic upstairs where we provide services. We also have Trager Rehab as an outpatient clinic in our space. So we work with them also very closely. So together we're trying to just create a better world. And today we're going to talk a little bit about older adults and technology. As you know, the people who are aging right now are the baby boomer generation, and they have been more accustomed to computers than the other older adults from before. So we are going to share with you a little bit of the things we need to be aware of and the pitfalls that we can fall into when we work with older adults. And we also know that the tech space is where there's a lot of development and a lot of new opportunities that's been created. What is happening in this space? And are we doing things right? Or do we need to be a little bit careful sometimes in how we do things? So I'm going to start, and I'm going to talk a little bit about dementia and technology. Then I'm going to pass the baton to my colleague Pam, who's going to talk about robots. Up until yesterday, we knew nothing about robots, but today we know a lot about robots. And then after she's done, Barbara is going to talk about ethics and technology. And then, is it you or is it Catherine? I can never remember who. Then Sam is going to talk a little bit about the dignity of older adults and when they use technology. And then we're going to end this whole discussion with Catherine, who's going to talk about safety and privacy when you use technology. So that's sort of the roundup of this group. And then we want to open up the panel for questions, because this is about how do we figure out technology for older adults who's living in the community and using it wisely. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to start by this disclaimer that I think is really important that we all get, is that the Trager Institute does not approve or endorse any of the apps that we will discuss in this presentation. Apps are selected to provide examples of what is available and have not been tested to verify claims made by developers. And I'm making this statement very specifically because I want to say that in the dementia world, there's not good regulations in place these days. There's a lot of stuff that is getting on the market. There's a lack of standardized quality indicators, and commercial drivers of the dementia marketplace present significant barriers for consumers seeking meaningful dementia information and support. It is an industry currently that can be exploited. So therefore, we are careful. I was careful to even put apps on here that could be useful for people with dementia. But I want you to see what's out there. And always make sure that you do not necessarily believe what you're being told, but read the research. Read the research. I had to read for this about 20 different articles to make sure that I don't mess this up. And there's a lot of research in this space that say that the claims that developers are making about the technology that's available in the field for older adults, not always the right claims. So let's start with the dementia screener. Now, in the world of primary care, you are required by Medicare sometimes when you do an annual wellness visit with an older adult who's older than 65 to do a cognitive exam. And it's been made very easy in the EHR systems to use dementia screens that is available in the technology world. So the mobile COG app, it automates the 3-minute mini-COG test. Those of you who are aware what the mini-COG test is, it's very quick to do. It's a very quick screen of trying to see if there is any potential cognitive decline. So it's a screener. It's really just the beginning of the journey to uncover if a person is having some kind of cognitive troubles. So they have, all of these things have been digitized, and that's good. That's good because it helps us in our practices to do a better job. You can also, even as family members, can use these screens to see how your loved one is doing. There is a little bit more comprehensive one that you would do if you send someone for a better and a longer neurological assessment. The mobile cognitive screening app asks 33 questions to assess 8 different cognitive functions. So clearly a much more elaborate one as the 3-minute test. And then the mini mental status exam has been one of the standard measurements that's been used for the longest time to assess dementia. And even that has been digitized by the mobile Cogni tracker. All of these tools are available online for anyone to use. And I remember when my dad developed Alzheimer's, I did the mini mental status exam on him. But I had to use paper. That was in 2003. I had to use paper tools. Now you can, as a family member or as a loved or as a person that's working with older adults in a professional capacity, you can use all of these tools, easy available online. So they use these apps a lot for screening. Now I'm going to move to the patient. So as a patient, there's a lot of things that you can get online that can help and support you. Now, we all know that people are saying you need to play games. You need to play these games. You need to make sure you work your brain. So there's a lot of preventative mobile apps to enhance memory and other cognitive functions. And the one that has recently been asked to pay out $2 million settlement is Lumosity, because Lumosity was claiming all these things about how it's going to do better for you in terms of your memory. And clearly, it was a false claim, and they had to pay out some money. So that is, I put that on as the first one because it comes up a lot. If you do a Google search on what's a good technology to use, some of these things come up, and you go for it. The one that's been the most, well, we know Sudoku, it's one that everyone has been playing for the longest time on paper. That one is now available as an app, easy to use, and it does improve memory and concentration and mood. They did a lot of studies. NIH did a lot of studies on that, and it's okay. It's okay. It's a little bit, to enhance your memory. It's not going to prevent necessarily the development of Alzheimer's disease, but it keeps your brain active, and it helps you to stay active longer. The one that has the most research done is Brain HQ. Impact study published in the Journal of American Geriatric Society is actually showing there is some memory improvement if you use Brain HQ. And a lot of doctors underscore that one as the best one. So that's just to give you an idea how the market is just all over the place sometimes with these things. Now, the activities of daily living based on cognitive training for people living with dementia. We all know that the worst thing is for an older adult who's starting to have memory problems to live alone. That's the biggest risk. So we always want to put them immediately in a care home or a place where they can be safe. But there are apps that's being developed now to help you on that journey. So there is this app, Dress. It's a beginning of a system that helps an older adult who's living alone or even with a caregiver, but help the older adult to get dressed in the morning. So that's one of these. They are starting. It's not. I'm not sure it's already fully on the market, but it's one of those things that has some good reviews and looks really good. I'm gonna end with the one in the middle, but the one in the end is there's a lot of studies that's been done by a variety of groups that say a simple thing like a watch and a phone can do a lot to help people keep their reminders intact. You know, when you need to do your medications, when you need to do this, when you need to get up, all that kind of stuff. You can use your watch very effectively, and you can use a phone very effectively to just guide people with dementia to do some of the tasks still by themselves, or even just to support the caregiver. The one in the middle, the Reminder Remy, is an application that's been developed by engineering students here at the University of Louisville, under the support from a medical doctor and an engineering professor who designed a platform for someone living with dementia to get both the audio, the text, and the image of a loved one. So say, for example, I have a father living with dementia, but I live in New York and he lives here. Then I can take this system and I can wake him up in the morning with the audio that he knows is familiar to him, the text that it's typed out, and my image to tell him to get up and go and make himself a sandwich, or get up, go to the bathroom. Those basic tasks and that Reminder Remy has actually won some they do a capstone celebration event at the end of each year, and this one won a few awards, and it's actually on the process of getting ready that you can take it to market. So there are a lot of these things that we are supportive of and work very closely with people at the University of Louisville. So one of the things with older adults is the need to think back about their lives and think, happy memories, things that they can remember. These tools, all of these tools have been evaluated by a meta-analysis NIH did, and came up with that they would support these free tools. Inspire D supports personalized stories, basically. So what happens there is you can see here, it says here, these are my photos, these are my sounds, my videos, my albums. And it's set up in an easy way for someone living with dementia to go through it. So as a caregiver can give this to a person with dementia, and they can, just pay slowly through it, and it will keep them busy for a while. Also, Grey Matter is an interactive life storybook. It uses photos and music and games to preserve the memories and engage with the person with dementia. All of these are showing improved memory, improved mood for the older adults living with dementia, if they can go through some of these things that remind them of their life before. The Ticket to Talk is an interesting one, because you can let family and friends that know the person with dementia create some starters to have a conversation with. And the starter will have a picture of that person and maybe something that they did together, and then have a conversation with the person about that. I was just talking to people that I know that is currently back at their home after a bad episode of care that they had to get in a nursing home, and the wife has dementia. And so now they have 24-hour caregiving support, but it's really taxing for those caregivers. So now the rest of the family wants to think, how can we be engaged? And so I told them about this Ticket to Talk, and they started to use it to let the family members rotate through an engagement exercise with that person. And it's been very helpful and really helping the mood of that person to be more stable. So nice tools here to help a person who are dealing with dementia. We all know that caregiver support is really crucial and really important. So there's a lot of technology-supported monitoring and behavior management tools. The Insight Den automates assessment of behavioral features. It's actually interesting. They put sensors on a person, and then that helps you track certain mood changes and provide professional guidance then on how to manage them. So that's an interesting one. That still is in process of being further developed. The pain check, we all know, those of you who work with people with dementia or have experience with people with dementia, they cannot really tell you when they have pain, but they can, just by you looking at the face of the individual, they can assess the pain levels in person with dementia. Now, this one here at the end is our own Sam Cotton, sitting right here. She developed with a group of engineering students, and Dawn was also involved in it. The Flourishing Embrace is the name of this tool. It's an app that we are actually sending out to caregivers next week, I hope, to provide useful tips on navigating the caregiving experience with compassionate caregiving. So this is a new app. We developed this with funds also from the Department of Health and Human Services, and we're very excited about it. And the original beta testing showed some good data that looks like it's really helping you in that midst of the crisis that you're dealing with a person, to be able to go to this app and find some answers. How do I do compassionate caregiving? And then lastly, this is also important. There's a lot of false information on the internet about dementia, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about how do you handle dementia. What are the different types of dementia that you have? What's the difference between vascular dementia and Alzheimer's? You know, all of those things we need to be able to know if you are dealing with someone who are in this situation right now. So the Understand A provides dementia learning modules. That's been rated as a pretty good tool to use. And then social and therapy support. So there is a lot of talk too that caregivers get really isolated. So what do? They cannot leave the house because they're taking care of an older adult that cannot be left alone. So StoryCall, it's an online system that records stories related to your caregiving, and then you share it with others. That's really been very helpful. And then this MIT app uses all kinds of ways to help a person in a therapeutic environment to deal with their stress and their, sometimes really bad depression. They're feeling stuck in this world where they have to do the caregiving. So therapy interventions, there's been a lot on the market. Therapy, doing it virtually, is a new thing that really escalated after COVID. Here in our space, we have a whole behavioral health unit, and most of our patients we are seeing remotely these days because it's just much easier to access. For older adults, it's one of the easiest ways to access healthcare from a behavioral health perspective because you don't have to leave your home. You can be in an hour conversation with a therapist, and it's been just a very unique way of engaging, and you get much more engagement. The no-show rate is much less with this kind of therapy that's done online. So that is just a few ideas of what you can do for dementia patients. There are a few industry concerns that I just want to list here. There's no standardized industry standards that can be used to evaluate the developed technology. The end users are seldom included in the design of the technology. Now you may ask, so how can we include someone with dementia in the design of an app? You can, and there's research studies showing how great the mood is of these people once you engage with them and let them tell you what they can do and not do. It's been, and the same, of course, for caregivers. You can easily engage them in the design. So it's a lot of value to include them. The end users do need some basic knowledge in terms of IT and skills. It's making it sometimes difficult for people living with dementia to engage with technology, but as I said at the beginning, the baby boomer generation, most of them do have a little bit of understanding of technology. Shouldn't be a big deal. Apps don't always have a patient-centered design to allow for individual customizations, and randomized controlled trials are very far and in between. They are rated currently as a low quality in terms of patient outcomes evaluation, a grade C. So a lot more of us that we need to do in this space. And now I'm handing it over for the robot discussion.
More stuff here. Okay. Hi there, everyone. I am Pam Yankee Love. You may have heard that last name once or twice over the last few days. So I'm going to be talking to you about attitudes towards robots. Oops. And take a second and think about the first time that you actually were exposed to robots. Was it Rock'em Sock'em robots? Right. Was it the
Lost in Space.
Lost in Space? Yeah. Yes, that's right. What about Rosie from the Jetsons? I've thought of Rosie many times over the last 2 decades of my life. And what about the robot? Anybody do it? Come on. Nobody's ever done it? Come on. I was hoping somebody I could pull up and they could be my, backdrop. But anyway, all right, so robots actually, so the idea is that, oh, well, let me ask you this. The term robot, how many years has it been in play? Anybody have any ideas? That's right. It's been almost 100 years, so 1920. Oh, thanks, sis. 1920, it's been around. So I find that interesting. I got that from ChatGPT. So right? So maybe check your accuracy there. So the idea is that the global market for robots in 2022 was $3 billion. But in 5 years, it's going to be $17 billion. Who wants a part of that? Anybody want a part of that? All right, so it's the estimated cumulative revenue growth rate is supposed to be 30%. So there's a variety of different robots, and they kind of fit in 2 general categories. One is basically to help people age in place, so for community dwelling older adults. And the other one is really to address labor shortages in like hospitals or long-term care facilities. So if you think about the various community dwelling older adult type robots for community dwelling include social companion, cognitive support, pet robots. Has anybody ever seen LEQ? I wonder if they have LEQ over at Thrive. I'll show you a picture here of LEQ in a second. But LEQ really tries to get at all of the pillars of lifestyle medicine. So we at the Trager Institute really infuse lifestyle medicine in our approach to care. And so it's really trying to get you, it can help you think through meditation, it can help interact with you through telling you stories or telling you the news or giving you quizzes or having a conversation with you. It can get you to exercise. It can get you to do some self-management behavior. There's also these Joy for All Hasbro pets. I think if you had gone to Thrive over the last day, you'll see them on the bed. There's also Pero. Pero is an infant seal that costs about $6 grand. We'll tell a little bit about how that's used to, I think you might be able to get it for $4,500. The assistive healthcare robots, for example, is Giraffe. Giraffe is kind of like a long pole of sorts with a tablet on top that's on rollers that can roll into a clinic if you need like telepsychiatric care and you don't have that in your clinic. You can also roll it into a long-term care or assisted living facility where another person has eyes on the surrounding and can look around and see what's going on and have a conversation and find out if there's anything that you would need. And then there's fall detection. Personal care. I like personal care. Personal care, there's one out there called Stretch. And the video shows how it is that it goes and it picks up laundry or toys in the hallway or, pours you a glass of wine at the end of the day or removes your computer from you and tucks you in. No, those are the things I would like it to do. But yes, then there's fall detection and fall detection type robots that will also check to see if anybody has fallen. On the long-term care facility side, there's humanoid robots that include Amica and Sophia and Grace, and they actually look like humans. Their faces are very expressive, and through generative AI, you can have a conversation with them. Then there's transport robots. Those are things that actually transport both people as well as supplies. So in the hospital, there's something like Moxie, and it'll transport all the different supplies to the different rooms. And then there's something like Hug or Robert, where it lifts individuals in long-term care facilities. So what is the status of robots, the attitudes towards robots? And primarily, the research in the attitudes towards robots comes from social robots. And there's a variety of different factors that play a role in the attitude. It includes the antecedent, the attributes, and the consequences. So If you've had prior experience with technology, you're more likely to have a positive reaction towards a robot. If you're a female, you're more likely, older adults, you're more likely to have a positive reaction towards social robots. Prior experience with a pet, you're more likely, of course, to enjoy the pet robot. But then again, if you've had experience with a pet, perhaps you may not want that robot in your house. There are individuals that have a strong desire to age in place, so they're willing to give up their autonomy and their privacy to be able to have, fall detection robots. If you have a cognitive impairment, with support, you may have a positive reaction towards social robots. The attitude, their attributes, is that if you have a staged exposure to a robot, so if you've never experienced a robot and there's a staged exposure, so if they show you pictures and then they show you videos and then you're exposed to the robot, you're more likely to have a positive experience to that social robot. Knowing the areas of concern as it relates to that robot and teaching to that will actually increase the positivity towards that robot. Of course, cost plays a role in that positive attitude. And if the robot matches your needs, your expectations of what it's going to do, you're going to have a more positive. And if it's more human-like. So if you think about, LEQ, it moves, like the bottom part moves from the top part, and it's got blinking lights, and it's not particularly human-like, but it has kind of the character and the behavior of a human. And then the consequences, one of the things I was very interested in was stigma. If you feel that others will think of you badly if you have a robot in your house for social interaction, there's a concern there that you're less likely to be positive towards the robots. If it helps you with reducing your likelihood of having loneliness, or if it increases your chances of brain stimulation, you're more likely to. But you also have to think about the caregiver. If it malfunctions and the caregiver has to do something with it and reset it and deal with that, then that's going to reduce the attitude. So there's a lot of time that's spent in the research, in the meta-analyses and the systematic reviews that I looked at on the actual attributes. But the attitudes based on the individual and the way that the robot is actually introduced and the environment of the older adult really plays a role in that attitude towards the robot. So in 2022, the New York Office of Aging actually handed out 800 LEQs to older adults. And the LEQ, because of generative AI, what it does is it remembers things and it brings up things back to you. So it's not like Alexa, where it's just an assistive, type robot where it just responds to things. This particular LEQ actually will respond to you, think of memories, bring it back into the conversation you're having. It'll remind you of music, and so you begin to have more of a bonding sensation to that social robot. And so it helps with validating your life. We were talking about yesterday, if you're only talking to a social robot and the only thing that it does is it just validates you over and over again, you may not know how to work out in the real world where people may not be validating you. So your robot should actually have multiple personalities, right? So the next thing is that there was an MIT review in 2023 where there was a tech guy who actually spent 16 months in a nursing home, and he watched the interactions with Pero, Hug. Hug is that mobility robot that lifts. Pero is that infant seal, and then also Pepper, which is a humanoid. And what he noticed was that there was significant issues with actually transporting the individuals using Hug. And he also noticed that Pero caused problems because there were some individuals with dementia that really wouldn't eat unless Pero was with them. There was other individuals who were trying to rip the skin off Pero. And then with Pepper, Pepper was actually used as, Pepper, if you've ever read anything about Pepper, Pepper's been fired from a lot of roles. Pepper was actually fired from a grocery store because any question that was being asked of it kept sending people to the alcohol aisle. Somebody doesn't see the problem with that. So, alcohol can be our answer to many things. So Pepper thought that too. But Pepper was used for recreational activities, and people got bored with watching Pepper, so then the humans had to stand next to Pepper to actually continue the excitement in the exercise class. So the robots, actually, what they did was they reduced that social interaction between the caregivers and that emotional connection that they had. Because of the various things that the Hug and Pero and Pepper were doing. So it actually created greater distance between their caregivers and the actual individuals. So the author, James Wright, talks about how it is that maybe we shouldn't be spending, $300 million. Instead, maybe we should be spending it on labor shortages and maybe training and maybe making a just and equitable society. So, it does beg the question. So I'm going to leave you with a quote that says, this is from James Wright, who wrote this article. He says, "Technology clearly has a role to play, but a growing body of evidence points to the need for far more collaboration," that you said, across disciplines, and the importance of care-led approaches to developing and deploying technology with an active involvement of the people being cared for as well as the people caring for them. So, all right, thank you. Ethics, and there you go. Do you also need the camera? No?
Nope.
Oh, I don't have to disrobe?
You will. For Sam.
Oh, I'm giving it to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about ethics and technology, and I'm sure even hearing that word ethics and my two colleagues before me, I'm sure that you probably are already thinking about some of the ethical implications as it relates to technology and older adults and persons with dementia, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just going to start with just some fundamental definitions for the purpose of our conversation today. After we present, we do want to have a conversation with you. We want to talk to you about what we've shared with you today and really just have a really robust discussion about where we're going with technology. But there are many ways we can define ethics, almost as many as there are people in this room, right? But for the purpose of our discussion today, ethics is the discipline and practice of applying value to human behavior, as well as to the constructs of human culture, particularly to morality, customs, and laws resulting in meaningfulness. And we need to understand ethics when we begin to have these discussions about technology. The role and impact of technology in both our personal and working lives is ever growing. We've heard a lot already this morning as it relates to the aging field, but we know that technology is growing in all of our lives and all of our worlds. And some of us particularly have a love-hate relationship with technology. But understanding how people shape technology and how technology shape people's interactions with each other in the natural world is really, really important. And again, I work in this field of aging. It is particularly important here. I'm going to share with you some of the reasons why that is, but also just want to entertain you in terms of thinking about the ethical implications of technology as it relates to older adults and many populations that we work with. So not only for those of us who are in research, those who develop and implement new technologies, but also for all those people and organizations that have to use those technologies in their working and personal lives. We need to think about the ethical implications. Technology is not a neutral word. Different people will give it different meaning depending on their viewpoint and context. Technology concerns itself with understanding how knowledge is creatively applied to organized tasks involving people and machines that meet sustainable goals. There's three, basic premises that I like to, for us to think about this morning as we discuss this whole idea of technology and the definition as it relates to working with older adults. Technology is about taking action to meet a human need rather than merely understanding the workings of the natural world, which is the goal of science. And as we think about the ethical implications of technology, working with older adults and working with people with dementia, et cetera, we need to take note of this particular aspect of this definition. It uses much more than scientific knowledge and includes values as much as facts, practical craft knowledge as much as theoretical knowledge. You know, some of the things that Pam shared with you about the robots and their interaction and relationship with the, or people's interaction and relationship with those robots, and how the social context of that was not necessarily perfect or even good for that matter. We have to consider that as we bring scientific knowledge together with values, together with the social context of our world. It involves organized ways of doing things. It covers the intended and unintended interactions between products, machines, devices, artifacts, and the people and systems who make them, use them, or are affected by them through various processes. So as we think about ethics and technology, remembering that it really truly is all about the people that we're working with and serving in our world of aging is very, very important. Every choice we make relies on and feeds a highly interdependent and far-reaching way of life where some have much and some have little. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as it relates to ethics and technology. So ethics and technology are closely intertwined as advancements in technology continue to shape and influence various aspects of our lives. From personal interactions to societal structures, ethics provides a framework for evaluating the moral implications and consequences of technological developments, helping us navigate the challenges and opportunities that arise. So yeah, ethics is a boring topic for most or many. I love ethics myself. I really get into it. It is pretty exciting to me, mainly because if we're not considering the ethical implications of the things that we do, the work that we do, particularly in this world of technology, then we're missing a lot. So as we think about and consider when, ethics and technology, let's think about when ethics and technology collide. And these are just some categories, and I'm going to highlight a few of them. In my next slide is really just going to help us to hone in on a few questions that we might want to ask ourselves and discuss as it relates to ethics and technology. And some of these categories, these topics have already been discussed by Dr. Fall and Dr. Yankee Love, but they are very, very important considerations. So privacy and data protection. The digital age has led to vast amounts of personal data being collected, stored, and analyzed. And we know, because it's evident in many of our own organizations, in the media, we know that our data and information is not as safe as we would hope it to be. Just here in the great city of Louisville, a really big health system had a major data breach. And the patients of that particular health system, their data was no longer private or protected. So there are ethical concerns that arise around this regarding how data is used, who has access to it, and whether individuals are adequately informed and have consented to its use. But it also revolves around the organization, the health system, the industry, and what they do, how much they pay, et cetera, to make sure that this information is protected. What systems are they putting in place to make sure that this information is protected? And having been in the field for a very, very long time, I can let you know just from my own personal and professional experiences, not all organizations do everything that is necessary to protect our information. So we also, when it comes to our ethical obligations, whenever we're working with individuals, even through partnerships, et cetera, we also have a responsibility there. Artificial intelligence, you all have talked about that quite a bit over the past couple of days, but we know AI systems have become more sophisticated, but questions arise about their potential impact on jobs, decision-making, and accountability. And there's a whole lot of questions that are arising in the academic world, in the research world, and probably all of our industries, especially since ChatGPT. I wasn't able to come to some of the sessions yesterday that covered that, but it's a phenomenon that definitely we're dealing with. The digital divide, that's an ethical implication that we who work in this field have to consider. Everyone does not have access to sometimes even basic technology. We work with older adults here in Louisville as well as across the state who still doesn't have internet. In this day and time, that is a reality. So we have to consider access to technology. All those wonderful things that Dr. Fall and Dr. Yankeelove presented to you earlier, the robots and the apps and the tablets, et cetera. Many older adults may not have access to those. It could be a reality of many different situations and circumstances. And even if they do have it in hand, have it available to them, do they know how to access it? The digital divide has many, many components. And the last one I'm going to mention here that's on this list that I think is really important is algorithmic bias. Algorithms used in various applications from hiring to criminal justice or any of these applications that we have talked about thus far this morning can unintentionally perpetuate biases presented in the data they are trained on. Ethical issues arise when these biases lead to unfair outcomes. Now, you may or may not know, but if you know anything about research, we know and understand that many times the subjects of research are not diverse. There are not a lot of cultural diversity as it relates to that. In researching these apps and doing research with robots and other technology that we use in the world of aging, there's not a lot of diversity. Cultural diversity, economic diversity, et cetera. So it's inherently biased, and that is an ethical area that we have to consider. So what are some of the questions that we might ask ourselves as it relates to ethics and technology? And these are some things that I love for you to just think about and consider as we continue to have our discussion. Dr. Cotton's going to come and talk about dignity of risk, et cetera, which will still delve into this whole area of ethics, whether we like it or not. But addressing these ethical considerations requires collaboration among technology developers, among policymakers, ethicists, ethicists, as boring as we might seem, in society at large. And it has to include as well, this discussion, these considerations, the people that we plan to serve with the technology that we're developing, all the people that we plan to serve. Ethical frameworks, codes of conduct, and regulations can guide the responsible development and deployment of technology to ensure that its benefits are maximized while minimizing potential harm. Technology can be very, very useful, and in developing technology, it's a lot of fun, it's very interesting, it's exciting, but it bears a lot of responsibility. It's crucial for individuals, organizations, and governments to actively engage with these issues to create technological landscape that aligns with ethical values and principles. So as it relates to privacy and data security, how is the user data collected, stored, and used? Is it anonymized and protected? Those are questions that we must ask ourselves. As it relates to algorithmic bias and fairness, have algorithms been tested for bias across different demographic groups? Are there efforts to mitigate and correct the biases? How are decisions made by algorithms affecting individuals and groups? Are they fair? Are they equitable? These are questions we must ask in this whole ethics and technology arena. How can technology be used to augment human capabilities rather than replace them entirely? Dr. Yankeelove talked a little bit about that as it relates to the robots in various facilities and industries. Is the technology designed with the user's well-being in mind, or is it just designed with profit in mind? Are there mechanisms to prevent addictive or manipulative features that might exploit users' vulnerabilities? Can the technology be developed and used in ways that are more environmentally sustainable? And how does technology impact different cultures and societies around the world? Are there considerations for avoiding cultural insensitivity or imposing Western values? Are stakeholders from diverse backgrounds involved in the development and decision-making processes? How can the public's concerns and insights be incorporated into technological development? These are questions that we must ask ourselves, those of us who are in this realm of technology, developing technology, et cetera. Addressing these questions can help guide ethical considerations when developing and implementing new technologies, fostering a more responsible and beneficial relationship between society and technology. Yes. I'm the one that had the Come to Jesus meeting, so now we're going to turn it over to Dr. Sam.
Thank you, Barbara. Here, I guess I'll just sit this. There we go. Can you all hear me? Perfect. Awesome. Well, I think Barbara has set me up really well to talk about dignity as it relates to technology, because this is such an ethical consideration in the work that we do across the board. And I actually want to start with a story. As I was sitting here listening to my colleagues speak, I started thinking about dignity in general, but also how we sometimes present technology in a way that's not very helpful to older adults. And I'm close to 40 now, right? And I keep up with technology, love technology. And when I was about 22, I had just graduated from college. I didn't have a job, didn't have a place to live or any of that. And I ended up living with my older adult aunts who were in their 70s, early 80s at that point, and their friend. I lived there for like 5 years, could have kept staying with them. It was awesome. You might be thinking, God, that must have been so boring. I tell you, those old ladies knew how to party. Like, it was crazy. But anyway, my friend who lived with us, she's 95 now, and she lives in a nursing facility here in Louisville. And she and I always bonded over our love of reading. So I still go and see her every now and again, and we'll sit together and talk about books we're reading. We, have kind of an informal book club, more focused on various things that we're interested in. And recently, she has started going blind, so she can't read any longer, and that has been such a massive blow to both her mental health and her just that feeling of keeping up, because she would be that person when a new book came out, buy it immediately, right? I remember waiting in line with her when I was much younger for the Harry Potter books when they came out. We got to the store when it was you had to wait in line. So this is just a huge part of her identity. So I thought, I don't get to come over here that much and read to her. Now that we've started doing that and it's more me reading to her, I know I have an idea. I'm going to get her an Alexa, and I'm going to set it up for her, and I'm going to set her up with audiobooks, and I'm going to have it all programmed for her, and this is going to be easy peasy. She's a very capable person. She has a PhD. She'll figure this out, right? Totally, that was my hubris in thinking, oh, this is going to be easy peasy. So I get it all set up. I spend an hour or so teaching her how, what commands to use. We got her the Kindle audiobooks on that, and it was great, right? Or at least I thought so. A couple of weeks later, she calls me, and she's very mad at me. And she has some very creative language usage that I can't share with you all, but yeah, it was fun. So she's like, this is not working, and all of these things. And so I go over there, and I realize, this is not conducive to what she wanted. And I never ask her, is this something you want to do, right? Because in my head, instead of it being a thing where I thought I was assisting her, but really I was replacing that connection between the two of us. And I hadn't been over there to read with her and talk to her since I had set that up. So I think that shows, when we're talking about dignity and maintaining that in technology, that is a crucial piece of the puzzle. And for older adults, particularly those who have not grown up with digital innovation, it's really important for us to, really think about it from this framework. And sometimes it's not just about the technology. It's not just about that specific device or that specific app. It's really about that sense of, I don't understand this. And most of us, regardless of our backgrounds, regardless of our personalities, regardless of who we are, we really, really have this need to feel competent and to feel like we know what we're doing and to have that level of independence related to whatever it is that we're doing. And technology for a lot of older adults becomes this thing where they don't feel competent and they don't trust it as a result. I think Dr. Fall made a good point that as generations of individuals or cohorts of individuals are starting to get older, those who have maybe been exposed to technology and had to use it on a more regular basis than the current generation of older adults might be more keen at adopting it and keeping up. But I don't think that's necessarily 100% going to work out because things move at such a quick pace in technology. There's always going to be a learning curve. And so I think that, it's really important for us to think about this from that dignity framework because, that's really tied into our personhood, that feeling of being independent, that self-sufficiency that we all need to feel, and just that total sense of identity. I know it would be very blowing for me to think, oh, I can't do this thing, right, that I've always been able to do. And so all of that's, really tied up in this idea of dignity. And how do we then think about technology that is more compassionate, that where we can, build in that patience, that learning curve for older adults, for them to be able to navigate some of these various things that can be supportive or assistive to their everyday lives. And the other thing I want to add to this as well is that, when you start thinking about all of the various things that are out there for older adults to participate in related to technology, I think it's really important when we design new technology that's older adult focused, we think about how we can preserve some of this and focus on not replacing those human connections, but really focus on how we can help individuals from a more assistive way. And I read a really great article, and I wish I'd read this before I helped my friend set up Alexa, right? And completely blew that one. But it was really focused on perceptions of older adults in dignity and feeling as though they really couldn't connect with technology because of the fast-paced nature of it. So I pulled a couple of quotes from that study because I think it's really important for us to think about this and let this sit with us for a little bit. The first one is really focused on that feeling of dignity in its connection to you as an individual and your personhood and that sense of competence. So the person says, and what it is for me and my generation, it's that we've mastered our things. We've been able to do what we should be able to do. And suddenly we're so illiterate about it. So thinking about this, changing view of how you are in society. And I think sometimes we often also, when we're working with older adults on various pieces of technology, maybe helping them out, we don't have that patience with them. We just expect them to move with us and move at that speed of light. This bottom quote, very little language for us, which is simple enough to understand. But yes, it's not easy. They speak their language, and it's not the language that those who are not computer educated would understand. And this was in reference to thinking about even providing older adults with manuals to help them with whatever the technology device is that they were using. But think about a lot of our technology related programs. There's a lot of symbols that you might not know what they mean. For example, I think about Twitter, I guess it's not called Twitter anymore, but the hashtag, right? So we all use hashtags to search for things on Twitter. Well, for some of us who grew up with phones with, numbers, we call that the pound sign, right? So, it's like different language. We have co-opted some of these things that were already out there, and we're using them in technology in a way that maybe doesn't make sense for individuals who were not exposed to it from the beginning. And then this other quote, I wish it was still possible to have something that's private, that not everything is posted online. And I think when Catherine talks, she's going to talk a little bit about this as a nice lead-in for her. You're welcome. And here's the thing that struck me about this. And with my friend, this became a topic of conversation as well, because she was saying, I didn't want to call and bother you, but then I just got so frustrated I decided to call and curse you out about the Alexa. But I do not want to ask for help. That does not feel good. right? So that sense of like, I want to be able to do this independently. It's not a reluctance sometimes, more so than it is that fear of not knowing how to do something and having to ask somebody for help. And so how do we move from this confusion that older adults have, this feeling of that lack of dignity, that lack of feeling competent, that helplessness, that dependency that individuals face, to that comfortability piece? How do we use technology to support independence versus them being dependent on other individuals for different devices to work? How do we help them feel more comfortable asking for assistance? How do we create this culture of compassion when we talk about technology and do it in a way that's productive for older adults so that they can really, again, engage with some of these different wonderful tools that could be helpful for them? So a few considerations, and I think there's a lot more to be said for this. I could probably talk about dignity all day, but really not making those assumptions when you're working with older adults and the adoption of new technology. I made an assumption that my friend was like going to be super pumped that I gotten her this device and set it up. I was thinking about all the possibilities now, because she doesn't really care for watching TV anyway, like thinking about her getting the news from it, having her calendar of her day-to-day activities on it. I had all these plans, but I made an assumption that that was the thing that she needed, right? I didn't have that conversation with her about, do you think this would be helpful, or let's try this instead? We didn't have that testing out period of various things. The other thing I think it's very important for us to remember is avoiding tech jargon without an explanation. I think sometimes we assume we're all speaking the same language related to technology, and we're not. So making sure that we, if we're going to use jargon, I think that's great to bring everybody up to the same proverbial table and having that conversation. But we need to make sure we give an explanation. And just think about, when you're in a space where there are individuals speaking related to their discipline or their work life, and it's not something that you do every day. For example, my husband's a lawyer. He uses legalese all the time in our normal everyday conversations. I have no idea what he's talking about most of the time. So I'm always asking for clarification. Sometimes when we present things in that way full of jargon, it just becomes confusing. And if we know that older adults are already struggling and asking for help, that's just going to make the situation worse. Letting go of the idea that new technology is embraced quickly. Technology is so fast-paced, right? Dr. Fall mentioned earlier that I've been working on an app for caregivers. And what I realized very quickly in working with some of the individuals in our beta testing and piloting this is that some of our older adult caregivers who are caring for other individuals who are older adults struggled in the beginning with some of the navigation pieces and weren't really using the app after they were given access to it. And so it took me a while to figure out, okay, well, you've talked about how useful this is. Why aren't you using it? So, really taking that step back and know that adoption of things takes a moment sometimes. And so it's up to us to also think about that and consider that when we're designing things or having conversations about technology. And then focusing on helping older adults with digital literacy as a whole, not just focusing on teaching them one specific app or one specific device and how to use that, really starting to process with them how all of these tools can be used, and helping them better understand some of the language associated with those various tools can be very powerful for them to feel more competent and to feel more independent. And you're not just teaching them about one thing. So, really taking that step back and thinking about and better understanding what they know about technology. The other thing, going back to not making assumptions as well, that I would like to add to this is that I do think sometimes we assume that all older adults fall into that category of, not being digitally literate, and that's not true as well. So making sure if, you're working with an older adult, from that dignity perspective, be respectful and understand that some people have various levels of understanding. And so making sure that you don't just assume they don't know anything about technology, because that's going to make them very upset right off the bat. So I think that's it, and turning it over to Catherine.
Thank you. Oh, let's not get tangled.
Which one do I need to give you?
You keep that one and take this one, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you already have this one?
Let's hope so. All right, I'm going to put this one in my pocket, hopefully. All right, hopefully everyone can hear me. Are we good? Hey everybody, I am Catherine Lindsay. I'm the Director of IT here at the Trager Institute. And before we begin, I have to confess to you that I had a dream that my presentation today was so chaotic and so scattered that it made the former mayor of Louisville weep. What is even more alarming about this is that he wasn't in the audience, he was in his home, and my presentation was so bad he felt the disturbance in the force and started crying. So I don't know what that says about my mental state, but hopefully nobody is going to be reduced to tears today. I will count that as a huge win. So I'm going to be talking about technology and privacy, particularly digital privacy. And we find that older adults generally are less concerned about their digital privacy than the general population. But that's not to say that the general population is really that concerned or does that good of a job with our privacy. We're a fairly technically literate audience in this room, right? A privacy conscious audience. And I would bet a significant amount of money that every single person in this room has scrolled to the bottom and clicked agree on some terms and conditions that they haven't read, right? You could have just agreed to be put into a rocket and shot into the sun and you would not know, right? So there's been some interesting research on where's the mouse? There's been some interesting research done on attitudes to privacy. We need a mouse pad in here. Right. It's very just like. So we all say we're concerned about privacy, but how we behave doesn't necessarily communicate that concern, right? There was a really interesting study done where they interviewed members of the general public about their attitudes to digital privacy, particularly in the realms of their health data. And they also interviewed medical researchers. And what they found was the general public would say that they had a very blasé attitude to what consent they were giving to use their health data for apps and websites they were using. They had an attitude that it was going to happen regardless. They were going to be profiled regardless. So that's, it's the cost of doing business, essentially. If you want to use an app or you want to use a website, you have to give up some measure of your privacy. Now, when they interviewed the medical researchers said they found it incredibly difficult to get people to consent to using their medical data for research, right? So there's a big disconnect there. We're okay with corporations using our data, but medical research, if you've ever gone through the medical research process, they tell you what data they're going to use, what they're going to do with it, how long they're going to use it for, and what they're going to do with it when they delete it, right? Your data is so much more safe in that scenario. And yet we find people are less likely to consent to that use. So it turns out that the way that we ask for consent for people's data has a really big impact on whether they are likely to consent or not. And we tend to think that we are safe in a crowd, right? If we're just one of a number of people, there's kind of a safety in anonymity. And I'm going to argue that in the 21st century, anonymity really doesn't exist anymore. And one of the ways I want to demonstrate this is with a study from 2013. So this is 10 years ago, right? Think about how much the world has changed in 10 years, and then kind of extrapolate out to what's possible today. So in this study, they only had 2 points of data. They had a specific point in time and the cell tower that that person was close to at the point that they got a call, right? So this is the original data set. This person at 8:32 was close to this tower, and then at 9:15 they were close to this tower. And then what they did is they took that data and they made it less precise, right? So now they know that this person, between the 2 hour span of 8 to 10, was somewhere in that box. The next 2 hours, they were somewhere in this box, right? That's very, very vague data. And they had the data for 1.5 million people over 15 months. They found that if you randomly selected any 4 data points, you could uniquely identify 95% of those people from just 4 data points. That's crazy, right? I read that and I was shocked. But really, it makes a lot of sense. How many people woke up in my house this morning and then drove to an elementary school and then drove to a middle school and then drove here? Only me. I'm unique in the world in that respect, right? So if that is possible back in 2013, think about the last time you downloaded an app and you gave it permission to use your location. Do you think it has 4 data points for you? Oh yeah, right? So there's a lot of things that we don't really think about as being unique identifiers that are really just exploding the idea that we can be anonymous. Now, we've seen that kind of, as an individual, we're not really a great steward of our own data, right? So maybe corporations can be good stewards for us. What do you think? So I've used 4 examples here of companies that have data breaches. One of them is very obviously not a healthcare company, but when we're talking about assistive technology for older adults, a lot of that focuses around remote monitoring, be able to check on people, and Ring is a huge player in that space. So this happened a few years ago now, but Ring actually had no internal controls whatsoever over the access to their videos. If you were an employee or a contractor at Ring, you had unfettered, unlogged access to all of the videos stored from Ring cameras. And of course, if you have a security door that is open that wide, somebody is going to walk through it. And they did have employees who were spying on people in their homes. Now, VitaGene, you get the clues in the name there, what they do. That's a genomics company. And they were found to be storing people's genome data on Amazon Web Services in such a way that it was unencrypted and it was publicly accessible, right? We've just seen how from a very vague kind of timestamp of where you were at a certain point, we can uniquely identify you. Imagine what we can do with your genome, right? So if you're a customer of VitaGene and you see somebody walking around who looks suspiciously familiar, you may have been cloned. I'm sorry to break that to you. Now, GoodRx and BetterHelp actually did they both did the same kind of the thing in that they gave customer health data to Facebook and other tech giants in order to do targeted marketing. So GoodRx segmented their customer base by the prescription medication they were taking and then gave that data to Facebook. So what did Facebook do with that data? Who knows? It probably wasn't anything that they would have wanted to happen. BetterHelp is an online counseling service, and they gave to Facebook and other tech giants information from the BetterHelp sign-up form on their website. And that includes questions like, are you suicidal? Are you depressed? What medications are you taking? These are all significant things that I don't think anybody would volunteer to just release out into the world. So we've seen also that maybe as individuals, we're not good stewards of privacy. Corporations also aren't good stewards of our privacy. What about the government? So there are a kind of mishmash of federal laws that in some way kind of relate to health data, but nothing that really does a really good and comprehensive job. When we're talking about the health information privacy, we all know HIPAA, right? A lot of websites and apps that have your health data right now are not considered a covered entity under HIPAA. HIPAA has no jurisdiction over those, okay? It only applies to health systems, insurance companies, things that actually operate in a medical space. Also, although HIPAA has kind of changed and evolved over time, does anyone know what year HIPAA was signed into law? Somebody here knows, surely. 96. Pam wins the door prize. 1996. Do you know what I was doing in 1996? No. Thank you, peanut gallery. I was waiting for my mom to get off the landline telephone so I could use a dial-up modem to connect to CompuServe and wait 2 minutes for a website to load, right? I see some nods of recognition in the crowd. These are my people. All right, the world has fundamentally changed. We might as well be living on a different planet from when that law was introduced. So there is an incredible pace of technological change, and regulation is not keeping pace with it, right? Think about the world that we're now in with generative AI. How is regulation ever going to catch up to that? So there are a number of different laws here. I'm going to talk actually a little bit about the FTC, because they have a health data breach notification rule, whereby if a company exposes the health data of 500 or more people, there are rules about who they have to tell. They have to tell the FTC, they have to tell the consumer, and in some cases, they also have to tell the media. So the fine for that violation is $43,000 per violation per day, right? If you're Facebook, that's chump change. You can get that down the back of the couch. If you're an individual kind of mobile app developer, that's going to be a very bad day for you very, very quickly. And if you are developing a mobile app that has any kind of relation to health data, go to the FTC's website, and they have some really good guidance on there where you answer some yes or no questions, and it points to which laws might be applicable to you and which ones you probably don't need to be concerned about. So there's also things going on at the state level. One of the ones that I want to call out is Washington's My Health, My Data Act. And that is very, very comprehensive in how it specifies health data, and also includes the line about health data that can be inferred from machine learning or algorithms, right? That's something that's very obviously missing from these other ones. And also covers a lot of biometric data, including biometric data that we don't often think about, right? We think about how our location can make us unanonymous. Well, our keyboard cadence, the way in which we type, is unique, can be used to identify us also. It's not something a person can use, but it's something that a computer can use. And we really need to start thinking in terms of machine learning and what a computer is capable of doing rather than what a person is capable of doing. Now, I am reluctant to bring up TikTok in this space for this audience, but I'm brave and I'm going to do it anyway. There is a TikToker who became famous for what is called consensual doxing. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I got one person with me on this one, right? Don't install TikTok, don't let anyone you know install TikTok, but Google consensual doxing on TikTok. What this person did was they had a volunteer who said, hey, my TikTok profile doesn't have any reference to my name, and the only thing that's on it, the only image that's on it, is a cartoon image of a face with glasses. You can't figure out who I am. It took this person with no skills. It's not an intelligence agent. This is just a regular person. It took them 35 minutes to uncover that person's name, birth date, and address. Wow. Right? Google it and read the news story about it. You'll enjoy it. So if that is what a person with no particular skill set can do, imagine what an algorithm can do, right? There used to be some safety in the pockets of data that were all in silos, and now that data can be churned and crunched very, very quickly. So unfortunately, I don't have any kind of easy answers today about what you should do, but this is definitely something that you should be paying attention to. Thank you.
Now we all need a drink.
The buyer is weeping. Any questions from anyone? Yes.
I wasn't originally going to come to this, but it turns out it's extremely topical for me. I have a brother who's been diagnosed a couple years ago with Parkinson's, with dementia.
Oh, yeah.
I have a sister, a little bit older, that has PPA. Anybody know what PPA is? Progressive passive aphasia.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Heard of Bruce Willis?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
I also have a mentally handicapped brother who I'm guardian for the last 30 years. So one of them the brother lives in Columbus, is moving to Louisville in assisted living. What I see here is the gap between the implementation of what we're talking about. Should I expect the assisted living facility to be looking forward with this stuff? Or should I be doing it myself? I'm a technology guy, so I can deal with it.
Yeah, you know what, I almost want to say do it yourself. I had we're actually gonna meet with a guy next week who his mother had kidney failure and was on dialysis, and he developed a plate for the medication management, a basic board that he just concocted together, and he used that to help his mom. And it's become a revolutionary kind of thing. Something as basic as that could really help people, you know, with those needs. But overall, I don't think you can rely on assisted living facilities who's going to help you figure this out. We need to help people figure it out who's in their home. So first of all, I want to say join our caregiver program. We have a great caregiver program for people like you who do the caregiver. We can provide you support. We can provide you guidance on what technologies could be workable for you. So really, you are dealing with what so many of us are dealing. I managed my father's Alzheimer's disease living in America, and my dad was living in South Africa. We didn't have this kind of technologies at that time in the early 2000s. If I would have had these now, at that time that it's now available, it would have made my life easier. So just want to put that out there.
I see a lot of potential with things. He's moving from a $500,000 house, which he can't figure out how to get rid of all the stuff in, which is another issue.
Yeah.
To a 2-room assisted living, enhanced assisted living, whatever that means. And it's a room that's about this big, from here to there. And I'm sitting there thinking, why not have him move into a standard like house that has multiple rooms with assistance?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because somebody has to pay.
Say again?
Because of the cost.
Well,
Yes.
money's not the problem.
It is for most people.
Most people it is, I realize. But in his case, he could afford to do that very
Yeah,
easily.
yeah.
And I'm just wondering if that's a better, so it would be a downer to me to
Yeah.
move into a.
So the industry is moving. So the original tech developments was for older adults was so much focused on nursing homes and the technology enhancements of in nursing homes and the big bucks you can make by developing technology in the nursing homes. You cannot make that much money by providing these kind of technologies for people in the home. But because it's difficult to scale it, it's not always easy. Your market is more diverse. However, the technology world is moving in that direction because everyone wants to age in place. That's where people want to be. And there's now people moving back sometimes to come to these more enhanced places. Smart homes, that's basically what we're talking about here. Smart homes that can support people living their lives at home.
It's challenging. And with him moving here, he was always independent. He was no kids. His wife died 8 years ago. And, this came up in the last 4 or 5 years. He has Parkinson's with dementia. I found out that how you diagnose Parkinson's is there's 11 indicators. If you have 3 of them, then you have it. I didn't know that.
I would say I wonder about that.
Yeah.
That's something I've heard about.
Yeah.
It's the list of functional.
Oh, okay. All right, any questions there?
Yes, I have a 96-year-old father, and he lives by himself, which is stubborn Italian more than anything. But, we keep up with, he's very cognitive, he can talk and stuff like this. I can see, based on our conversations, certain things I have to tell him 3, 4, 5 times, so I'm like, I better watch this. But his attitude with the phone is, I want my phone for phone calls. I don't want messaging. I don't want all this stuff. Some of these apps I'm gonna have a hard time using with him in that case. But I'm more interested, I think, in the caregiver side of this than anything.
Right, so actually my sister dealt with her mother-in-law was exactly like that. She wanted the phone for only the phone. Only the phone, nothing else. Didn't want a cell phone, none of that. Just the landline in South Africa. And there's not good Wi-Fi. She didn't even want Wi-Fi. So how do you help an older adult with that? So the caregiver support, bringing in the caregiver resources, supporting the caregiver with technology sometimes is your answer. And keep the dignity intact of that person who said, I don't want anything else.
He has a cell phone because he got rid of the landline, which I wish he hadn't done that, mainly because it gives us another way to get in touch with him.
Right.
But I call him every day just to make sure he answers the phone.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. But he said, his vision isn't all that great, so he can't read the phone anyway. And that's why he wants to just use it for.
So there are these sensors you can put in a house, make the house smart to make sure that you can detect when someone is falling or did fall. There's a variety of things that you can help to support caregiving from afar. using technology. Anything else? There's one more question there, yeah.
So, maybe a little bit on data privacy. So, did, like BetterHelp and GoodRx, did they actually do anything illegal, or was what they did written into their end user license
Right,
agreement?
that is a really good question. Did somebody actually consent to do that? So they actually, it was not, it was a civil penalty that they had to pay to the FTC, right? So there's a lot to think about there in terms of what is okay and what we agree to.
So did they just change their licensing agreement to make it say, hey, it's in there now? you know,
Right,
Because they know
yeah.
nobody ever reads them. So-
Absolutely. I can't speak to that, I don't know, but I think now that the FTC has dinged them at least once, I mean, and that's the thing we have to think about too. These companies that are caught doing this stuff are probably more secure after they've been caught, right? It's the companies that you've never heard of with a data breach are probably just unfettered, you know, doing anything.